Hey everybody, Jay Weidner here, and you're watching Reality Check. Thanks for watching, and hit like and subscribe, and I appreciate it a lot. Building the channel. I got a really good show for you today. It's just me winging it alone here. But this is a subject I've wanted to talk about for a long time, and finally decided to do it. So you're going to get a big alchemy lesson today. A big time download. All right, why not? 20 years ago, I probably would have been arrested for telling you what I'm going to tell you, but today nobody seems to care. So first off, let's go and read the foundational text of Western alchemy, which is the Emerald Tablet, written by Hermes Trismegistus. And Hermes is, of course, the Greek version of Thoth. Thoth is the great Egyptian scientist who supposedly made the pyramids and all that. So this is Newton's version. "'Tis true without lying, certain and most true. That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to do the miracles of one only thing. And as all things have been and arose from one by the mediation of one, so all things have their birth from this one thing by adaptation. The sun is its father, the moon is its mother, the wind hath carried it in its belly, the earth is its nurse. The father of all perfection in the whole world is here. Its force or power it is entire if to be converted into earth. Its force or power is entire if it to be converted into earth. Separated thou the earth, through the earth it would be, from the fire, the subtle from the gross, sweetly with great industry. It ascends from the earth to the heaven, and it again descends to the earth and receives the forces of things superior and inferior. By this means you shall have the glory of the whole world, and thereby all obscurity shall fly from you. Its force is above all force, for it vanquishes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. And so was the world created." So that's the Emerald Tablet, which is an extremely important document, and you'll understand as I go forward here. I'm calling this show The Secrets of Light and Dark. So next I want to read to you from a 1993 book. This is called The Melatonin Miracle, and it's written by, I bought this book when it first came out, Walter Pierpoli, MD, and William Regelson, MD, with Carol Coleman, probably doing the heavy lifting there. And unfortunately, I'm gonna have to use a flashlight. I know you guys get upset at that, but I'll try to not flash it into the camera. This is really important. This book is a nonfiction book by two scientists, okay? Let's see. This is page 54. The chapter is called Proof Positive. "For some time, I had been contemplating doing an experiment that to my knowledge had never been attempted before. Transplanting a pineal gland from a young mouse into an old mouse. I reasoned that if a young pineal could," let me start that over again, really small writing. "I reasoned that if a young pineal could rejuvenate an old mouse, just as the melatonin supplement rejuvenated old mice when it was placed in their night drinking water, then we would have discovered something extraordinary, that the pineal gland controls aging. Transplanting a pineal gland is not easy. The pineal gland of a human is about the size of a small pea. The pineal gland of a mouse is about the size of the period at the end of this sentence. It is tiny and fragile, and transplanting it from one mouse to another requires a great deal of patience and precision. Then there was the question of where to put the transplanted pineal. Ideally, when one transplants an organ, one takes out the old organ and replaces it with the new one. This is not easy to do with a gland the size of a pineal, located in an organ as sensitive as the brain. Also at the time I was doing the initial experiments, microsurgery technology in my laboratory was not as advanced as it is today. Thus, I knew that I would have to leave the old pineal in place for a while. I had also considered putting the new pineal into the kidney capsule, which was often used as a transplant site in animal experiments. I debated this problem with Bill Regelson, he's one of the authors, who happened to be visiting my lab in Switzerland at the time. I considered Bill to be one of the most creative, innovative researchers in the field of aging today, and I asked him to collaborate with me on this experiment. Bill and I decided that we should transplant the pineal into the thymus, a small gland located in the sternum or back of the breastbone. As you may recall from the previous chapter, much of my earlier work had been done on the thymus, which is critical for immune function in younger animals. The thymus and the pineal have something very important in common. They are connected to the same nerve center as the brain, in the brain, the superior cervical sympathetic ganglion, which runs from the base of the brain, where the pineal is located, all the way to the sternum and the thymus. Since the thymus and the pineal are both fed by the same nerves, we believe that the thymus was a more natural location for the pineal than the kidney. In our experiment, we removed young pineal glands from mice who were 3 to 4 months old, or the human equivalent of a teenager, and transplanted them into 6 20-month-old male mice, about age 65 to 70 in human years. We also transplanted pineals from young mice into female mice aged 16 to 19 months, or 65 years old and 70 in human years. To avoid rejection of the new pineal, we used special inbred mice that were the genetic equivalent of identical twins. The donor tissue was so similar to the recipient's tissue that it was readily accepted. Each procedure was performed with a painstaking care under a surgical microscope. A single pineal gland in its membrane was positioned on the top of the needle and gently inserted into the thymus of the older mice. The mice that had received the pineal transplants, like the melatonin-treated mice in the prior experiment, appeared to grow young before our eyes. Their fur improved, their activity level increased, and they looked and acted like much younger mice. Both their immune response and thyroid function were equal to those of much younger animals. The thymus glands of the transplanted mice, which are usually shrunken and atrophied in mice of their age, had been restored to their youthful size and condition. This suggested that the way melatonin restores immune function is by rejuvenating the thymus gland. The mice that received the younger pineal glands lived on an average 3 months longer than normal, about 10 to 15 years. We also saw that the younger the mice were when they received the new pineals, the longer their lifespan was extended. In other tests, we also saw in other tests, we also saw that mice who received young pineal glands at age 22 months lived 3 to 4 months longer, approximately 20% longer than a normal lifespan. Mice who received young pineals at age 19 months lived 5 to 6 months longer, approximately 30 to 35% longer than a normal lifespan. Thus, from the experiment, we also learned that the rejuvenation cannot be achieved if intervention comes too late. We concluded that there's a point where the body organs become so deteriorated that rejuvenation is just not possible, and that if we were to successfully intervene and stop the aging process, intervention has to occur before the point of no return. The experiment also raised a particularly perplexing question. You'll recall that the mice that received melatonin in their drinking water lived an average of 6 months, 25 human years, longer than their life expectancy. The mice that received the pineal transplants lived only an average of 3 months, about 10 to 15 human years, longer than expected. Why this difference? Why didn't the mice with the pineal transplants live as long as the mice receiving melatonin in their evening drinking water? If the pineal gland is the regulator of the regulators, And if it operates through its hormone melatonin, why should melatonin supplementation have a more positive effect on aging in implantation of a young pineal gland? As we reviewed our results and our procedures and pondered everything we knew about the regulatory role of the pineal, it occurred to us that these problematic results might be related to the fact that our subject mice had not one but two pineal glands. You will recall that although we had implanted new pineals into the older mice, we did not remove their old pineals. We theorized that the old pineal gland must have been telling the body to age, while the new pineal gland was in effect telling it not to age. The result was that aging was slowed down, but not to the extent that it was in the mice with a single pineal gland that received melatonin supplements. To return to our orchestra metaphor, it was as if the musicians were receiving conflicting directions from two different conductors. The results of our transplantation experiments made us more curious than ever about the pineal and heightened our conviction that it was the only instrument, that it was not only instrumental in the aging process, but is indeed the aging clock. We had seen signs of rejuvenation in the animals that had received the pineal transplants, and we had also seen a modest increase in lifespan. Almost done. However, we both felt that we needed more information and validation. Science is very demanding, and there were many questions still to be answered before we could say conclusively that the pineal gland and the pineal alone controlled aging. My work next took me to Russia, where I had an opportunity to meet Vladimir Lesnikov, a young researcher whose work so impressed me that I eventually arranged for him to come to work with me in Switzerland. Lesnikov had devised a special piece of equipment that made it possible to perform the most intricate brain surgery on the tiniest of animal subjects. His invention, called a stereotaxic instrument, provided a three-dimensional view of the head while allowing a surgeon to position it in precisely the right position for incredibly delicate maneuvers. Thanks to Lesnikov's ingenious invention and his magic hands, we would now be able to perform the one experiment that I believe would prove without a doubt that the pineal was the true aging clock. It would, as no other experiment had done, reveal the power of the pineal. The experiment we had devised was simple in concept, but excruciatingly difficult to execute. We wanted to see what would happen if we transplanted a young pineal gland from a young mouse into an older mouse, and a pineal gland from an old mouse into a young mouse. By doing such a cross-transplantation of pineal glands, we could see what effect, if any, the old pineal would have in a young animal and a young pineal would have in an old animal. This procedure was far more sophisticated than my initial pineal transplantations into the thymus, for one could actually see the effect of the new pineal without it being hampered by conflicting instructions from the old pineal. If the procedure worked, the pineal could perhaps regenerate its nerve supply and be constituted as a normal working gland in its correct anatomical location. This would provide a more realistic view of how the pineal functions than was obtainable by placing the transplanted pineal in the thymus. Also, we would be able to see how an old pineal would behave in a young body. I found this prospect to be particularly intriguing. I knew from past experiments that the aging clock could be slowed down, but could it also be speeded up? Would an old pineal in a young body also accelerate the aging process? The experiment posed a real challenge to even the most skilled surgeons. And although the power and influence is enormous, the pineal is in fact extremely small. As I pointed out earlier in this chapter, in humans, a pineal is about the size of a pea. In mice, it is dot-sized and barely visible to the unaided eye. We could perform only a few surgeries a day, with each session requiring about 3 to 4 days of preparation and at least several hours of surgical time. Thus, it took us weeks to finish all the operations. From our subject group, we exchanged the pineal glands of mice aged 4 months, the equivalent of 20 human years, with the pineal glands of mice aged 18 months, the equivalent of about 60 human years. For our control group, we performed sham operations on groups of 4-month-old mice and 18-month-old mice. We removed their pineal glands and put them right back in the same place, into the same mice. From the control group, we could determine if it was the surgery and not the transplants that had been having an effect on health and lifespan. The operations went well, and within a few months, we had several cages of cross-transplanted animals living side by side. We were to carefully tag each mouse, and each surgical group was placed in their own cage. So each cage consisted of 2 4-month-olds and 2 18-month-olds. Each week, we carefully examined all the mice, checking their vital signs and taking other measures of physical health. We began the operation in the spring of 1990, and after that, all we could do was wait patiently for the results. Many months passed. Then one morning, I entered the lab, glanced at the cages, and was positively alarmed by what I saw. The mice in several of the cages all appeared to be the same age. I knew this was impossible. We had carefully mixed together the young mice with the old mice so that we could see more precisely any contrast in behavior and appearance that occurred. I immediately assumed that one of the other lab technicians had accidentally mixed them up. Yet, upon closer examination, after checking all their ID tags, I realized that the mice were indeed in the right cages. Suddenly, the full impact of what I was seeing hit me. The reason that all the mice appeared to be the same age was that the experiment had actually worked. The old mice had been rejuvenated by the young pineals. What was even more startling, however, was the fact that the young mice with the old pineals were aging rapidly, way before their time. Both groups of mice looked precisely the same age. I was so amazed by what I saw that I ran to get my camera and took pictures. To this day, I still look at those pictures and marvel at what I see. 2 mice standing side by side, one 15 months old, one 30 months old, both looking exactly the same age. In human terms, that would be the equivalent of a 40-year-old standing next to a 90-year-old and passing as twins. But soon after, the age difference between the 2 groups of mice dramatically emerged. The young mice implanted with the old pineal glands began to wither and die, about 30% earlier than normal. The old mice implanted with the young pineal glands, however, lived on average 30% longer and maintained their youthful, vigorous bodies until the very end of life, which was about 33 months, or in human terms, around 105. Later examination would reveal that the thymus glands of the old mice who had received the young pineal glands had regenerated, whereas the thymus glands of the young mice who had received the old pineals had withered. What happened to the control mice who underwent the sham operations? Nothing. They lived out, hang on. They lived out their lives quite normally, showing no signs of anything out of the ordinary. From this experiment, I concluded that I found the true aging clock and finally understood not only how we age, but why we age. I suspected that the message throughout the body, keeping the body healthy and strong. Once the pineal ages, however, it sends quite a different message, telling the body that we are old and it's time to wind down. One by one, the various systems follow the pineal's lead until we grow old and die. As you remember, when I administered melatonin to the older mice in one of my early experiments, I was able to significantly extend their life and rejuvenate their bodies. I believe that melatonin supplementation helped bring the pineal gland back to its youthful state, and so in doing so, altered the message it was sending to the rest of the body and restored normal cyclicity or balance to the body. From these experiments, I concluded that maintaining melatonin at youthful levels in older humans would have the same positive effect. So the pineal is the aging clock. And then he goes on to talk about the next chapter. All right, so that's like super important, because what he's saying is that the pineal gland controls the aging process. Okay. So how does the pineal gland work? What happens is that when you wake up in the morning and the sunlight hits your eyes, serotonin is released. Serotonin is released from the pineal gland, and it is one atom different than dimethyltryptamine, the most powerful hallucinogenic known to the human race. So we are producing a kind of form of dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, when we wake up in the morning. That's why you get that really good feeling when you wake up, that you're looking forward to that day and what you're going to be doing that day. And if you're like me and you sun gaze in the morning, which I do, you can really get a big hit of serotonin that way. And then when you go to bed at night and the lights go out, the serotonin in the brain converts to melatonin. Now, melatonin is anti-aging hormone, and so that's why it comes out at night, because that's you're rejuvenating, you're healing at night while you're sleeping, and the melatonin is aiding the body in its restoration. That's why if you're over 50, you should probably be taking melatonin supplements, just because you're starting to lose a lot of your melatonin. But you won't have to take supplements if you just follow what I'm telling you here today. So we have this cycle of serotonin in the daytime, melatonin at nighttime. I like to joke that it's a Jewish couple, Sarah and Mel, right? And they're activated by light, activated by dark. Now, remember what I said when I read the Emerald Tablet. The sun is its father and the moon is its mother. All right, super important. And so what we do in the West, especially, which is really bad, is we stay up at night and we stare into computers, and so what that does is sends a false signal to the pineal gland that they're still up and they're still in the sunlight. And so the pineal gland doesn't convert the serotonin into melatonin efficiently if you're staying up at night and watching TV and looking into the computer or doing anything with lights. Just saying, I know everybody does it. I do it too, but you don't want to do it. It's not good for you. It's really bad for your health. So anyway, years ago, I had a person that I knew who's a much older than me, and he was very wealthy, and he had a library, and he let me into his library. I couldn't take any books out, but I could go to his house and read. He was really impressed with me for some reason, and took a liking to me. And so I got to read all of these incredibly rare books that are almost impossible to find. I have, in fact, tried to find a lot of them, like in Amsterdam and in the Czech Republic, and places like that, where the alchemical books are stashed. But I haven't been able to find a lot of these books. So I think these volumes were even rarer than I even thought then, because now here it is, like 35 years later, and I can't find at least 4 of these books that I read. So one of the books that I read was in Latin. It was Secrets of Light and Dark. And it was this really fascinating book. And in this book, they talk about alchemy as having a twofold nature. One is that alchemy gives you a revelation about a multi-dimensional universe that you really can't perceive with your mundane eyes. And alchemy gives you an extended life. And why does it give you extended life? Well, they say in the books that you need that time to study, but it gives you extended life merely because that's the result of the experiment I'm about to tell you about. So what they would do, and you're going to see a lot of allusions in the story I'm about to tell you, with both the story of Jesus and with certain Freemasonic rituals. It looks like this knowledge has been lost. Some people, like Montauk Chia, get close to it, but don't actually go the distance. I don't know anyone who's actually done this experiment. I'm only telling you about it. It seems like a fairly harmless thing to do. And so in this book, it said that you need, first off, you need a secret society to be able to do this. So you need, your brothers or your sisters or whatever. And you do. You would need to have a group of people in order to do this. And of course, you would all help each other. So what you do is you go into a completely light, tight room, a room that no light is getting in at all, completely dark. The cathedrals, by the way, have a crypt underneath them that has a room like this. And that's very important also to the unfolding of this understanding. So the cathedrals all possess a crypt that has a light, tight, and you cannot see a light when you close the door. Right underneath the nave of the cathedrals. So so your brothers in your secret society, they put you in this light, dark, tight room, and then and for 3 days you're in this in darkness, and they give you food and they take care of you and all, but you don't see any light at all. And then on the morning, early morning before sunrise of your beginning of the 4th day, so it'd be 3 full days, that you are blindfolded, tight blindfold, and you're placed in a light, tight casket, and your brothers take you up to a high place. Is all it has to be. It can be the top of a building or top of a hill, but you just have to have a view of the eastern horizon. Okay, it's before sunrise, and you're taken, and right before the sun hits the edge of the horizon, as it starts to rise, your brothers take you out of the casket, they face you towards the rising sun, and then when the sun finally comes over the horizon, they take off your blindfold. And you stare into the sun for the entire time until the bottom of the sun hits the horizon and starts rising. It's about 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes. But your brothers are going to have to hold you, because the incoming light is going to hit 3 days of melatonin that you've been in the dark, and it's going to unleash super powerful serotonin in you. And it's going to be like you just took like a gigantic dose of dimethyltryptamine. It's in fact endogenous dimethyltryptamine. And you are going to be in a multi-dimensional state, and they're going to have to hold you until the sun gets up there, because you're going to be collapsing from going on this dimethyltryptamine trip. And then they put you back in the casket. They blindfold you and put you back in the casket. They take the casket back to the dark room. They put you back in the dark room, and you have to stay in the dark for 40 days and nights. And in this book, it said that your entire body would become rejuvenated. And it promised, it said this is the highest ritual of all. And this is what's going on with all these secret societies in the medieval time. Now, what you're doing is your first initial 3 days in the darkness, and don't forget, Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days. And then he came out into the morning, into the light, and then he was alive for 40 days, and then he ascended. So I believe the story of Jesus, his death and everything, well, it may be a true story and all that, I'm not saying that, but it's also this ritual, a version of it. And there's other places that have the same ritual. There's shamans in Peru that do this in the back of caves. We know that Papa Sambaba in Tibet went into the cave and did light and dark practices so intently that he eventually turned into a rainbow body. His body literally turned to light. And incredible story. But again, you read it and you see how he's doing this light and dark thing, going into the cave for weeks at a time, and he's coming out into the light and he's staring into the sun, and he's having endogenous dimethyltryptamine. Endogenous means it comes from you. You produced it. So endogenous dimethyltryptamine or endogenous serotonin is homeopathic. it's on a cyclical thing. So it's you, it's not you taking a plant in the Amazon and having a trip. It's you producing the chemical and then giving it to yourself. And so it's you. It's like a torus. You're going in and out. So so what's going on here is you're going to the darkness for 3 days, and this fills up your brain, your whole body with more melatonin than ever, because who stays in the dark for 3 days? Nobody. So you're in the dark for 3 days, and now your melatonin is your brain is just juiced with it. Your pineal gland is just juiced with it. And then your buddies take you out and make sure you stay in the dark the whole time. And then right when the sun comes up, they take off your blindfold. And for that 5 minutes that the sun is rising, you're staring into the sun. It's at, by the way, you can stare into the sun that's rising without hurting your eyes. You can't. After that, it's probably not safe. So I don't, and when I sun gaze, I don't stare at the sun. I stare over by the side of the sun. Now I never stare into the sun, but you can at early morning when the sun's rising. And so the melatonin is instantly turned into serotonin, and that's why you'll have your knees will collapse on you because you've done, nobody ever has an endogenous dimethyltryptamine experience, but you have this multidimensional experience. And if anybody's ever taken dimethyltryptamine, at 5 minutes is like 40 hours on dimethyltryptamine. And so that 5 minutes you're staring at the sun is going to seem like 40 hours to you. And it's going to be a very lengthy visitation to the multidimensional universe that psychedelics offer, and especially dimethyltryptamine. So then they put you back in the coffin and take you back into the dark room. And so immediately that serotonin begins wearing off. And as you are immersed into the dark, that massive amount of serotonin begins converting into massive amounts of melatonin. And it's almost like there's a super melatonin created in the 40 days of darkness, and this book promises all sorts of things like, if you're bald, your hair will grow back and you'll lose your nails and they'll come back youthful, and your skin will be completely rejuvenated and your organs will be rejuvenated. And they did indicate that you have to do this, catch it early. So probably, earlier is better than later. And so I believe that this was actually the original secret basis for secret societies. It wasn't to gain power. It was that you needed your brothers or your sisters or both to help you, and you needed to help them, because each one had to go through this experience, which is a 43-day experience. So it's a long thing. It's, a month and a half. Yeah. A month and a half of your life is devoted to this. And you have to have somebody who's going to feed you, who's going to make sure that your waste products are taken care of and all of that. So that's why you need your secret society. And then you have to help them. So, so the secret of light and dark is the secret of alchemy, and the promises that alchemy, the things that alchemy promises, which is you having a vast understanding of the multidimensional universe that is invisible, that surrounds you. That's what the endogenous serotonin gives you. And then the second promise is that you'll have an advanced life. And, so if you come out of it at the end of the 40 days and, you went in and you were 55 and you come out and you're like 30, well, then you've got, you just bought another 25 years of life. So, and then you can do the experiment again. You can just keep doing it. It doesn't look like there's any danger involved in the experiment. The only danger I can think of is if it doesn't work. So, but I am planning on doing it. I have others who are, we're talking about how to do it, where to get a room, how to light-proof the room, who's going to be the first one to do it. And I don't know if I'll tell you my results because I don't know how far the establishment is going to want this kind of knowledge to get out there. That's why I'm getting this out now, because I feel like they're not looking. Like the establishment has got so many balls in the air that they can't, they just got to keep them juggling. And so they're not looking over at what people like me are saying, and they didn't understand alchemy anyway. But you can bet, and I really mean this because I know I'm right, every wealthy person has read this book, okay? And they know that that if they had a young pineal gland placed into their brain, then they would reverse the aging process. I'm just saying. It's if you go to Egypt, and they found all these skulls, and the skulls all had this part missing, right? Or it had been the skull had been taken out and then placed back, sewn back on or something. And scientists have wondered for years, what was going on there. And I'm wondering if, if the Egyptian priests weren't well aware of all this. I think they probably were. So this also gives, musings as to where a lot of the missing people go, maybe. If the pineal gland is the most valuable thing that a human produces, and if a very wealthy gentleman, wants to restore his age, well, I mean, they proved it in this book. They proved that the pineal gland controls aging. Now, what I just told you about with the ritual is a non-invasive, private way for you to do this. And what these guys are doing with the mice is very invasive. And I highly don't recommend that people do it. But it does make you wonder. All right, that's it. I've given you one of my big secrets of alchemy. And if you're smart and you understand what I just told you, you can run with it. And no one can, and it's not against the law. Nobody can arrest you. There's nothing illegal going on. It's all your brain chemistry, just manipulating your own brain chemistry. And if you do do it, would you contact me? I'd like to know the results. I'm very interested. My big problem is that I had a corporate job until just a few years ago, and I never could get 45 days, 43 days, whatever it is, in a row to do that. I probably could muster that out now, but would have to be in the winter because I have too many chores in the summer. So that's it. Secrets of Light and Dark. I'm Jay Weidner. This is Reality Check. And hit subscribe and share and like and all that other stuff. Thanks for watching. Sayonara.